All right. Brother Adnan Adrian Wood-Smith. We're both chuckling because we've been on record for a minute and now we're officially starting.
All right.
So, Brother Adnan, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be with you, man.
Uh, so, thank you so much for having this conversation with me titled Fight for Your Why Life Coaching, a Muslim Perspective. Now, here at BP Harmony, we focus on mental health recovery. And even when I do coaching or health coaching, mental health coaching, there are certain methodologies that I apply. I've talked to you about Ikigai, and even as a practicing Muslim myself, I draw from the rich Muslim tradition that you and I are familiar with. But the reason that I wanted to talk to you and to highlight your work is because you explicitly present yourself into the public as a life coach that draws from the Islamic tradition.
Hmm.
So I, before we get into some of our questions, let me introduce you formally. Brother
Sure.
Adnan Adrian Wood-Smith is a, correct me if I'm mistaken, it's the doctoral candidate uh,
Yes, there we go.
at at Harvard University, and he is founder of Greater Than or Greater, and his website fightforyourwhy.com is a lovely resource that I've come to benefit from. His letters or his emails that he sends are thoughtful. I write a blog. A blog takes me about 3 to 4 hours to write, and so
Mm.
knowing just the length of your emails that you send, I know that the not just the time, but just the research and the care by which you are presenting yourself as someone who offers guidance to people who are looking for purpose in their life. It is not for the faint of heart. So I
Mm.
appreciate the work that you do, even
Mm.
in a space where people are not reading as much. So Brother Adnan Adrian Wood-Smith has an interesting background. He first sought to seek to learn Arabic to for services for the United States government, and I'll let him go into that a bit more. And
Okay.
he, found his way to Islam, and he's been a pioneering chaplain in America, not just being one of those few chaplains at universities such as Zaytuna College, Brown University, but also providing the foundational literature in the space of Muslim chaplaincy in the U.S. So the Cavalier individual does pioneering work, and once I got connected with him, I was like, you know what? I need to get him on this podcast, get him into BP Harmony communities, and benefit from his perspective, and then also be of service to him by creating this recording for his work as well. So thank you, Adnan, for joining.
Well, it's the pleasure and the honor is really mine, I feel like. I mean, yeah, those were quite generous words you gave there, Imran. Mashallah, may Allah bless you. I think the sentiment that you expressed is definitely mutual. I mean, when I first saw what you were involved in setting up BP Harmony, I was so pleased and so excited just to see you having taken that initiative and someone like you being in this space. Um, sure, we'll get into my background with mental health struggles myself, not with bipolar disorder myself, but I have family members who specifically were diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and I
Mm.
wish that this resource, the BP Harmony, had been available to them a decade or something ago. And I wish too that when I was going through a lot of my mental health struggles, the kind of resources that you're building had been there for me in a way too, because I know, it's not just people with a diagnosis of bipolar disorder that you serve, though that is some of the people that you can serve most effectively. And so just in getting to know you, Imran, and getting to know your resources that you've built at BP Harmony, and hearing you speak about your vision for what you want to do with the project, I have nothing but love and admiration and appreciation for this, and just jumped at the opportunity to be able to help you in a small way by being a guest here. So, as I said, the honor and pleasure is mine, and it's so great to be here. And I wish all the best for this project for many, many years to come.
God willing. Thank you so much. And
Mm.
it's refreshing to hear from you be open about your family's mental health history, your own history with mental illness, because I still feel I've become quite comfortable talking about mental illness, struggles with mental health, but
Mm.
I think I'm a little bit blind, or I've become a little bit like foreign to the taboo nature of talking about mental health.
Mm.
My goal is to be able to talk about mental illness the way we talk about diabetes, blood pressure, cancer. Like there's no shame around these
Yeah.
diagnoses, but for some reason, I take it for granted at how open I am about these things, and maybe that is the task at hand for us to be able to talk about
Mhm.
these things more openly, because mental health is health. It's question for the day. Uh, how did you fall into live coaching?
Um, Yeah, great. Well, I just want to know. I don't know if it showed up on your end, but I just the connection just stopped for me for about 10 seconds there. So I don't know if that was my end or your end, but we'll move through
Yeah,
either way. And just in case that happens again, and in case I get frozen and have a blank look on my face, you'll know what's going on.
sounds good.
I'm at my father and mother-in-law's place right now in Colorado. So
Oh, okay.
normally my strong, unbreakable internet connection that I've set up is I'm just dependent on their wireless and everything. So excuse if there's any issues there. Um,
No worries.
but right, so how did I fall into life coaching? I mean, so I think about one moment in particular that happened about 4 years ago. So right at the beginning of the shutdown during the COVID pandemic. And I remember being in my living room one evening during March of 2020, and everyone else in the house had gone to bed. So my wife was asleep in the bedroom. We had a baby son who'd finally gotten to sleep. That was, it's often a struggle at that age, to actually get them to sleep. And I was just up in the living room, and I was sitting down, about to go get ready for sleep, but just kind of processing the day and just sitting with whatever I was holding at the end of the day. And I noticed suddenly that I felt like there was a little tickle in my throat, and my head was throbbing a little, and my whole body started feeling warm. And I thought what I think so many of us thought during that period of the COVID pandemic. I immediately thought, oh dear God, I have COVID. And immediately after that, jumped to the thought of, oh, I'm gonna die. Like this is it. And immediately after that, the feeling I had was, all right, I guess it's my time. I woke up the next morning, and it turned out I was fine, right? Physically, there was nothing. I didn't have COVID. I wasn't sick. I wasn't gonna die. I was fine physically, but I wasn't fine spiritually, if you will.
Mm.
because I looked back on that evening, the previous night, and I realized something is wrong. There's something not right here. The fact that I was faced very directly with my own mortality, and my reaction was a sense of relief. Like, okay, finally I get to go. And when I think about the kind of man, the kind of father I wanted to be for my family, because as I said, we had a baby in one bedroom, and then my wife in the other had a baby inside of her. We were expecting our daughter in a few months. I knew like this, people depend on me. This isn't the kind of life, this isn't the kind of example of a life that I want to give my children. And plus, like this isn't how I want to live anymore. Like I don't want to live just ready, just hoping that my time comes anytime. No, just dragging myself through from day to day.
Mm.
And so it was then that it hit me. I needed to get serious about defining for my life what my life was about, what I was doing in this world.
Mm.
And so I did that. I wrote down a draft why statement, if you will, on the whiteboard that we had in our bedroom. And I
Okay.
kept coming back to it day after day. I would recite that statement to myself in the morning. Like, this is my mission. This is what I'm about. And then I would keep coming back to the whiteboard and revising it. And then just as life brought me down, I would try to learn and think, okay, how do I actually? So now, by this point, um, it was in my first year of the PhD program at Harvard. I'd been a chaplain and an imam before for 5 years. Prior to that, I had done training, received specific traditional authorizations in Islamic sciences and teaching the Quran and Arabic and so I had a good deal of knowledge about Islam and particularly about the Islamic spiritual tradition, had authorization in that traditionally from teachers in Mauritania and Senegal. But it wasn't until that moment, starting in March of 2020 onwards, that I realized, you know what, there is guidance in this tradition to help me address the things that I know are not right in my life right now. And I
Mm.
need to think of how I apply these general spiritual lessons to the specific issue of feeling a lack of clarity on my mission in life, what exactly I'm doing here in this world.
Mhm.
And so I just, yeah, I was not that life would knock me down. I'd feel ready to die again, and just, oh, hopefully it's my time soon. And then I'd fight that, and I'd try to work against it and think, what can I draw from this tradition about how to combat that and find that, there's a verse in Quran that I love. In the Arabic, it's يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم. O people of faith, answer the call of God and His Messenger when He calls you to what gives you life.
Mm.
And that's what I was looking for. I was looking for what gave me life.
Mm.
And by defining what I felt like I wanted my life to be about, and aligning the rest of my life, all the nitty-gritty details around that sense of mission, I was able to slowly but surely tap into what I felt was a life-giving force that then allowed me to face the ups and downs of life. And when I was knocked down, be able to fight back and say, no, I have something to live for. I'm still in this world. I'm still in this fight. There's something I want to do in this world, something great I want to do with my life rather than just biding my time until it's my time to go.
Mm.
And so that was, as I said, the first year of my PhD program. Once I'd finished my coursework and finished the 2 years of teaching fellowship that we do after that of assistant teaching at the university, I knew I had to find gainful employment some way because assistant teaching just wasn't going to do it for the family. and for my needs. And by this time too, I'd spent several years, as I said, defining that mission and having a real clear sense of what I wanted to do in the world. And I
Hmm.
realized, you know what? Okay, I can't run from this anymore. I need to go out on a limb and help people the way I want to help them, serve in the world in the way in which I want to serve, and just make it work. I had a lot of fears around stepping out of the box that I was in and had been in for many years, just in academia. I'd basically been in academia my whole life, first as a student, and then, as you mentioned, Zaytuna College as a student life coordinator, then chaplain at a university, then a PhD student, then PhD candidate. Um, and so that had always it had given me a false sense of security and allowed me just to be complacent for much of my life. And so it was a year and a half ago that I branched out. I said, okay, I want to start my own business and want
Mm.
to help people in a way which I really feel called to, which I'm sure you can relate to, Imran.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that's how I fell into the life coaching space. Right at the beginning, I had a different sense of what exactly I wanted to do, what specifically I was going to design as a resource to help people in this business. But it was over those first few months, I had this recurring dream of this guy from my high school, one of the popular guys, kept recurring in my dream, and he kept appearing, and he was always in need of someone speaking into his life about practical guidance from the Islamic tradition.
Mm.
And and I would wake up and I'm like, oh man, like what was it about? Why does this guy keep appearing in my dreams? And I realized that I couldn't run from this sense of calling to develop resources for the kind of person that I was in high school, ultimately, because my mother, who has always been into psychoanalysis and dream analysis and that kind of thing. She teaches that she always taught me that anytime you see someone in a dream, it's not necessarily that person, it's a part of you that that person is bringing out.
Mm.
And so I knew like I felt called to develop resources for the kind of person I was in high school had I not had Islam, but then also the kind of person I became after Islam. You mentioned I was originally planning on going into government work, specifically being an FBI agent. That propelled my interest in learning Arabic because at the time, post 9/11, they needed Arabic speakers. Learning Arabic exposed me to Islam. Then I became Muslim, and then that called my whole life mission into question. So when I came
Right.
to Islam, I had a renewed sense of overall purpose, but it took that specific purpose of what am I doing with my life in this world away from me. And so floundered for many years and was brought as that point I mentioned in March 2020. And now on the other side of it, felt a need to then help people in the ways that I had been blessed to help myself with because of um, just being blessed to be with good teachers and learning strong foundations in the Islamic spiritual tradition to then apply to my life. And so I found myself basically in the life coaching space, even though I'm not sure how I feel about that term life coach, but it works. I remember a
Mm.
decade ago, um, I was, remember a decade ago, there was a common trope that people said, back 3 generations ago, people would go to their pastor for their life issues.
Mhm.
Then 2 generations ago, they would go to their shrink.
Right.
And then now they go to their personal trainer.
Hmm.
And that was a decade ago. I consider now the updated one, that trajectory from pasta to shrink to being the and I use that, I don't necessarily like that term shrink, of course, but like it comes that connotation of like, oh, I'm gonna see my shrink,
Right.
oh, I'm gonna, my personal trainer told me this the other day. It's really helping me in my life. Yeah, and then the new iteration is life coach, I think I see in this space. So I'm here in the life coaching space just to help people and looking to connect with people who can relate to some of the things that I went through,
Yep.
and can therefore just help them and ultimately, try to help the my previous self in a way.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, that resonates with me a lot because that's why I started BP Harmony,
Right.
to be able to help my former self. And it seemed like, once you had um, that moment of clarity that you weren't ready to pass on to the next life, uh, 4 years ago, it seems you went through this self-guided journey, but also working with the people that you trust, with the experts in your space, and
Yeah.
then you turn to um, your your flock or your community and started offering, because it seems like you were more or less doing that already, as a chaplain at various degrees. And so, however, the question that comes to my mind, which could be a segue into the next one, is,
Mm.
well, as a chaplain, as someone who's trained in the traditional Islamic sciences, um, don't you already have like a sense of purpose? Like, aren't we already taught these things at a young age that
Mhm.
as Muslims, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that our purpose is to worship Allah, our purpose is to worship God, is to live in accordance with certain etiquette, certain things to do, not to do, and and then what is happening after life, those things are provided to us in a pretty good amount of detail, both in the Quran and in the traditions. So I guess one thing I'm trying to answer for myself is, what was missing in that moment, um, that you didn't have, that, you know excuse me, that I guess the tradition already kind of explicitly offers. Does the question make sense? Like, we
Oh
have the
yeah, of course.
answers, but in that moment, it feels like we don't have um, the answer to that question of like, what's going to happen after life? What is the meaning of life?
Hmm. Hmm. No, of course. Yeah. I mean, that's the fundamental question that um, I yeah, I thought I was settled up till that point of March 2020, coming to Islam, having a sense and not just, if you will, I didn't just come into Islam and say, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to do the basics. Like I tried to do everything I could to just go full in on Islam. Everything,
Yeah,
like studying and spending all my time memorizing Quran and all this stuff. Like
yeah,
I took it really seriously, and this was my most important thing.
right.
And so just implementing the guidance of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, into my
Hmm.
life, every single thing I could access, just trying to implement every single little detail in my life.
Yep.
I had been doing that for years.
Right.
And then, right, this point comes where I'm sitting in the living room and realizing, okay, that's taking care of certain things. Like faced with death, I'm not scared of death. Like that's huge. Like that's not what most people can say. Like I'm ready to go, and I feel I have confidence and certainty about exactly what happens when I die and what's going to happen, and have brought that perspective into the rest of my life. So Islam, in a way, Islam prepared me to die, which is huge. We
Hmm.
all need that in our lives as humans.
Yep.
That the question of our own mortality and struggling with our own mortality is a huge struggle for all of us. Um, but I hadn't yet learnt what it meant to live. Sure, I'd learnt how to implement this guidance of following the guidance of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in terms of how to live in various aspects of my life. But the running thread of what am I doing? with my life specifically that was missing. And so once I hit that point and realizing that something was wrong, and then tried to work on it, and now am in a space of talking on this subject and consistently reflecting on it and discussing it with other people. And now it jumps out to me in the Quran in a way in which it never did before. So
mm,
specifically, I think about the story of Moses, peace be upon him, that appears several times in the Quran. And that pivotal moment of when he receives that clear sense of purpose for himself, that moment of the burning bush, which is present in all of the Abrahamic traditions. You have Moses in the middle of the night leaving his family in the desert and going and finding this bush on fire without being consumed itself. And this voice calls from the bush,
mhm,
and it says, إني أنا الله لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدني وأقم الصلاة لذكري. It says, indeed, I am God. There is no God but me. So worship me and establish prayer for my remembrance. That's what the burning bush says. But that's not the only thing it says. It also says, and unlike that first phrase, which occurs several times in the Quran, more often occurring is the next phrase, which there are several variations on it in different places in the Quran, since the story of Moses is related several different times with different emphases. But the wording of اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى. Go to Pharaoh. Indeed, he's an oppressor. That's also what the burning bush said.
mm,
The burning bush gave what I see, what I define as purpose, gave Moses a sense of purpose, or also what I call vertical why. Why, mission, purpose, with respect to the Creator, with respect to the heavens above, the originator, that greater existence, which is beyond us. But it also gave him a sense of what I've defined as mission or horizontal why. It gave him a sense of what particularly he was going to be doing in this world.
mm,
It told him your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to go to Pharaoh and rid the world of his oppression.
mm,
Now, you can argue, well, Pharaoh was swallowed by the sea then, and Moses still lived after that. Like, what about his mission then? If you look at what he did after that point, it was all about then rooting out the traces of Pharaoh in the hearts of the Israelites.
mm,
Pharaoh was still in their hearts because they'd been under Pharaoh's dominion for generations. So that had been imprinted on their psyches. And so they are then freed from the external tyranny of Pharaoh, but chained by the internal tyranny of feeling like they have to worship a calf.
mm,
And falling into all this mischief that shows that Pharaoh still had an imprint on their hearts.
mm,
And so that phrase, go to Pharaoh, truly he is an oppressor, I see as Moses' mission statement, Moses' mission statement, peace be upon him.
mm,
And so now when I look at the stories of the prophets and the stories of saints in our tradition as well, I see that not only do they take this overall guidance and their connection with their creator seriously, but
mm,
also they understand when that one cannot serve the creator without serving the creation. And
mm,
so unless I have a sense of exactly what I am doing in this world to serve my fellow human beings, my service of my creator, my connection to my creator is simply hypothetical. It's
mm.
theoretical.
I think this is a good segue into the next question because this mention of the horizontal why and your vertical why uh, starts going into the meat of your work, which is about
Mm.
purpose and life purpose. So my question, and by the way, I really appreciate your insight into not just Moses's mission to being eradicating, you know, um, pharaonic, like Pharaoh's attitude and his way, but even the traces of his worldview, which left a strong imprint. And a lot of what I feel like I struggle with is just the imprints of very negative forces
Hmm.
that are
Hmm.
left on people, that even on myself, something on my own self, that there are imprints that I have to first purify myself of. Um,
Right.
so it's a very it goes back to one thing one of the teachers at Zaytuna has mentioned, Dr. Ali Atai. He used to mention that we often read the Quran from the perspective of the protagonists, and we look at it, but we never, and we always look at the antagonist as the other.
Mm.
But Dr. Ali invited us to read the Quran and see what pharaonic elements we have in our
Right.
own selves.
Right.
And so, I like that perspective that you bring.
Mm.
So, you gave us an introduction into the sense of purpose and how you fell into life coaching yourself. You feel like you had the vertical why
Yeah.
and the existential crisis. I don't want to. Maybe that's a pretty strong term, but the crisis that you faced 4 years ago may have been
Yeah.
around the horizontal why. Like, what do
Yeah.
we do on this plane? What is
Hmm.
our mission? What is our purpose in order to fulfill that greater why? I
Hmm.
guess I'm falling into your mission statement and even your brand.
Hmm.
But why do people need purpose in their life? Why does the human need purpose in their life, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't think that this is something unique to me. I think this really runs to the core of the human condition that, I look outside and even in winter now, there's snow outside the window. It snowed overnight, but knowing Denver, within a few hours by the afternoon, the sun's so strong, all the snow is going to be gone. But the one constant between winter and summer is I see the rabbits outside.
Mm,
One constant wildlife, and just looking at rabbits, like every other element of the animal kingdom, it's rabbits respond to stimuli, but you don't see them kind of sitting around and just like they're contemplating existential questions like, wait, why am I eating this grass?
yeah.
Like why the human uniquely is the one being in creation that's plagued by the question of why. Both on the micro level. So it's just at any point, if you're whatever you are doing, I can stop you at any point and say, why are you doing that? And you'll have some kind of answer. But then, in terms of the overall unifying answer of looking at my life from an overall perspective, looking at the whole thing, we are plagued by the question of why. Why do I exist? Why am I here? Uh,
Hmm.
why am I in this world? And so, yeah, as I see it, that there are two parts to answer that question. There's the vertical why, and then there's the horizontal why.
Mm,
The human is the unique element of creation that can exist on several planes at once. And
mm,
so we both, in the Islamic tradition, we are taught and we have certainty that every single thing that happens in life is decreed by God Himself. Nothing falls outside of His decree.
right.
Every single thing. And yet at the same time, we have free will. And so those are two different levels of reality to operate on. They seem contradictory, but it's just because it's two different dimensions. You can't reconcile the two because they're separate dimensions, but the human has the ability to operate on both dimensions. And so, and since we have that ability, if we're not serious about operating on those different dimensions, things begin to atrophy. Our ability to be on those dimensions begins to atrophy, and that's when all kinds of issues start appearing, and including, I would say, a whole gamut of things that we label as mental illness can start happening as well.
Mm.
Um, and so we have a need.
Yeah, how so? I'd be curious to dive into that.
Yeah, well, I know that's an upcoming question, so
Yeah,
I'll get to use my thoughts and also my personal experience with that too.
sure.
But but yeah, but we have a need to understand my place with reference. I have a need to understand my place with reference to the one who created me, and then my place with reference to everything else he created. What am I doing exactly here? And so. Yeah, one of the most common questions that I get now in this space of being a Muslim life coach, if you will, is people approach me and say, well, my one mission in life is just to get to heaven. Like, isn't that good enough? Or
Yeah.
to be a better version of myself, or to serve God. Like, why do I need to specifically define my mission with respect to others? And my answer is, well, for one, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that mission, but there are a whole bunch of things potentially not right with it.
Mm.
That might work for you right now, but when life comes and you're faced with the mundane realities of life, like me becoming a father, and faced with like, oh, okay, I don't just get to work and find meaning in my work, but I actually like have to have an overall narrative of like, why am I taking this time changing diapers and helping this little human being figure out what it means to be human? That we different circumstances can come up in which we realize like, oh, wait, I need a narrative of what I'm doing on this plane.
Mm.
And there are all kinds, I mean, I could speak for an hour about the potential issues of not defining that, some of them being that it becomes very easy for us to fall into the comparison game that way too.
Mm.
If I don't have a sense of what God is uniquely doing in my life and what makes me unique and how I can uniquely serve, if I haven't defined that and therefore haven't done the work to develop my own internal metric of success of what it means for me to be me, I very easily fall into the comparison game, and this now bordering on a lot of your work, coming up against like I can't even get out of bed in the morning. Like,
Mm.
how is my life not how is my life not of lesser value than other people who like that takes them 2 seconds, right?
Right. When you say the comparison game, do you mean like the classic Keeping Up with the Joneses, or that just I have one car, they have two cars?
Well, not even extended comparison in terms of anything. Because ultimately, like one of the most important teachings in our Islamic tradition and our prophetic tradition is that what matters is not the external. What matters is intentions. As the saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, goes, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. The actions are based on nothing but intentions, not on outcomes. Outcomes can give you a clue into where what your internal positionality was, where your intentions were when things are done. But intentions is everything. And so even, yeah, not just the keeping up with the Joneses, that, oh, they have he owns his car, I don't. I'm renting, and she owns a house by now, and all that external stuff. No, it also applies to, well, so and so has memorized this amount of Quran, or so and so is praying in this way, or has this amount of knowledge, or has this kind of character that I see, and has the ability to just grab life by the horns and get out of bed excited every morning, whereas I don't.
Mm.
Anything. the only metric of comparison that should matter at all to us is how we were yesterday,
Mm,
not how so and so is today.
mm,
Am I bit by bit increasing the quality of my life
mm.
while I'm still in this world?
Yeah. So I guess how do you go about helping people answer this question? Um, well, let's see. Yeah, let's say for example, someone listens to this conversation and says,
Mm.
um, Adnan, I'd love to work with you. I feel like I really like what you said about this sense of purpose. Um, Walk me through what it looks like working with you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, right now the first offering that we have in the business right now is a set coaching program. Sometimes people ask me like, can I do individual sessions? And it's not that I wouldn't enjoy that and feel like I might potentially benefit and wouldn't learn mutually from that experience, but it's just at this point in the venture, I just want to bring about lasting transformation for individuals who need this kind of help,
Hmm.
need help defining their life mission and aligning their whole life around it. And so we built a specific coaching program for that, in which there are 12 lessons in the program. Everyone who comes in goes through the lessons at their own pace in a way that works for them, and really in a way in which they can practically apply the material from the lesson directly into their life immediately, and then in the long term. And then we have group training calls and then series of one-on-ones that person would have with me. And so it's a set program that, depending on how quickly and how deeply someone goes through it, can take anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months. And
Oh, okay.
that's the initial offering that we have, though. I also speak on this content throughout the country, and I'm looking just to allow this material to be of broader use in general. So I hope to have a book released soon within the next few years and that kind of thing. But right now, what we have is the email list, which you mentioned, and then specifically the coaching program as well.
Now, are these people looking for direction in their careers, in their personal life, in like more existential questions about the meaning of life? Like who?
Yeah. Yeah, it really varies actually. I mean, the one thing is that unites all the people who would really benefit from this program is people who want help defining their mission in this world.
Hmm.
There are certain people who have come across these resources and done a consult with me, and I've realized like they need more help with that vertical why than the horizontal why.
Ah,
Which, for that, then that's not quite what this program is about. But we're also building at Greater, we're building resources for that under development as well. But this is specifically for people who are looking for a sense of mission in their life, and that's plaguing them in a way. And
yeah.
also just their sense of how to align their life around that mission and just feel like life isn't just mundane and draining.
Hmm.
That going for that place of feeling drained in life to feeling just, yeah, a wellspring of energy and motivation and drive and discipline that just then falls into place.
Hmm.
And so you asked, is this mainly in terms of career? Well, as I see it, there's overlap between mission and career, but the two are not synonymous. And so one's career may be closely tied to one's personal sense of mission or may not. And there are pros and cons of both of those. Now, the key con of having your life mission tied to your career is that, once again, risk falling into the comparison game and falling into the metrics game. When it comes to defining our mission in life, we need to embrace that sense of success that comes with having a certain level of intentionality, such that I don't need any external feedback to tell me that I'm now doing the right thing in life.
Hmm.
Whereas a
Hmm.
career is going to be based on external metrics and things certain things need to happen for that career to keep going.
Right.
And so that can be a downside of feeling like your career is your mission in life.
Yeah.
So there is some distinction between those two. Yeah.
I like that what you've been talking about with regard to mission, and that being a missing factor for a lot of people that come to you. And this segues for me a question that I had, not just for myself, but it's a question that a lot of us at BP Harmony and anyone struggling with their mental health has, is that, what is the connection between purpose work and mental health? And, the background of this question is my own experience, you know, like yourself, thinking I was like a level 9 Muslim, having memorized the
Mm,
Quran, five prayers, awrad, tariqah, and giving dawah. And then when this illness came along and I wasn't able to read, I was no longer eloquent the way that I had previously been. I had no energy, no will to get out of bed, and I dealt with a serious crisis of uh, of like, what is my purpose now? Now that I'm not able to do the things that were fulfilling my purpose, and it became things like, well, today my goals are something as like simple as cutting my nails, but it was as difficult. It seemed as difficult at the time as it seems like writing a dissertation paper.
mhm.
Um, so I had it took time to be okay with having such basic purpose. My purpose in life became to get better. And a
Mhm.
lot of people are going to be listening to this, asking the question, like, well, how is this conversation going to help me get better? Because our lives during mental illness, it almost seems as if like it's on pause and nothing can be done.
Yeah.
Nothing substantive can be done until this mental illness goes away or it gets dramatically less.
Mhm.
Um, so that's really what I'm trying to answer for myself. Is it became a litmus test of where I was in my spiritual journey, seeing how much I struggled, seeing how much I questioned the suffering and the sort of being dislodged from my goal of getting a PhD. Um, so yeah, what is the connection between your work and mental health?
Yeah. Yeah. I heard a story a few years ago of a farmer somewhere in East Asia who lost his legs in some accident and could no longer farm. He couldn't till the land and do everything he'd been doing his whole life. And so he was lying in bed for several weeks, depressed, basically clinically depressed. And the people of his community, the people around him and his family, saw the state he was in and got together and bought him a cow. And from that point forward, he took care of the cow, milked the cow, which he could do in a wheelchair, made a living for himself, and his depression just went away.
Mm,
And so there are elements, to me, the word mental health is a catch-all for all kinds of sentiments of I'm not able to operate effectively as a human being and as effectively as I want to.
mm,
And it's a catch-all for things which, for symptoms that can arise from any number of different places. And so I, from my personal experience, have faced mental health issues stemming from several different levels, several different dimensions, if you will, of issues within me. So there was I for pretty much as long as I can remember, I have bouts of pretty serious depression. It's gotten worse at certain times in my life, but depression and pretty specific and serious suicidal ideation is something that has just been part of me for a long time.
Mm,
And when when it started appearing regularly, really was when I was in my second year as student life coordinator at Zaytuna College.
mm,
And I had one person in particular in my life who knew what I was going through and was convinced that my depression was situational.
mm,
And just was telling me like this isn't where you're meant to be. Like this job, you're not able to be all you can be in this job and everything. And so when things got really serious in terms of my depression, I gave 2 weeks notice and I left. I
mm,
left that job. And to this day, I wish I could have approached that differently, and a little more maturely and understanding what was going on, and wish I could apologize to all the people there at the institution who just felt a little like left in the lurch because I was looking after the students for a year and a half, and then suddenly I say, mid-semester, this is March, I think, of that year. And they said, can't you just finish the semester and then take off? And I said, no, no, I'm leaving in 2 weeks. And I actually the college provided me my living situation too. I lived with the students there, and so I had to find my wife and I had to find a different apartment and move. It wasn't just losing the job.
right.
Yeah, and then it turned out it wasn't just situational. That I was really faced with then um, a few years ago started to exhibit the some signs of what's called CPTSD, complicated post-traumatic stress disorder, or complex PTSD, which is so I was exhibiting the signs and symptoms of PTSD, but not necessarily from a particular incident, but more from what certain things that happened in my childhood that I had never properly processed. And
Mm,
so I went through several months, basically my whole summer back, what was it, 3 years ago, was spent working with a therapist, specifically in the modality of internal family systems therapy, to just map out my psyche and reparent parts of myself that had been traumatized from childhood.
mm,
And so that explained a lot of the mental health issues that I had had for many years and never gotten to the bottom of. Shortly after that, I transformed a lot of things with my diet and ended up being keto for a while, and that took care of a lot of symptoms too. So there were certain things that just had to do with my nutrition and my sleep, which were causing mental health issues for me.
right.
But then too, at the end of the day, once I'd resolved the trauma and gone through professional therapy for that, and
Right.
also felt like I had these physical elements of nutrition and activity and body awareness and everything in place, there was still the underlying motivation to pull me through everything was missing. And that's where the purpose work I saw came into play in terms of I needed to settle that in order to take care of one of the key roots of my depression and just that sense of being deflated in life.
Mm,
And so when I often say to people who are interested in the Greater Why program that we offer, that the typical participant in the program will be someone who's actually done mental health therapy and that has answered certain questions for them, solved certain issues for them, but hasn't answered this particular one that we work on in the program, because that's where I was. And from my experience, I do think it's more effective. There have been plenty of times when I've like had a consult with someone and I can tell, yeah, it seems like you really need some therapy here and take some
mm-hmm.
time to do that and then consider doing the program. So in general, therapy is something which deals with kind of that often needs to be dealt with first before coming into a program like ours and before working on purpose work. But it can also go in reverse in terms of I remember just yeah, once again that comparison game, spending a whole summer just working out my own psyche. There were many moments in there when I was just like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? Why do I have to do this? And this is just silly, like trying to talk to sub personalities inside myself and reparent them. Like, what am I doing? Like, seriously, man. And what helped me through that time was that this was 3 years ago and not 4 years ago. So March of 2020, that moment I mentioned in the beginning of our call had already happened. And so I had already started working on that purpose work. And
Yeah,
so knowing that, like, look, I have a life to live. If I'm able to resolve these issues, this basically my sense of mission of I want to do something specific in the world pulled me through the drudgery of and the really mundane at times struggle of working through a time of intense therapy, basically.
yeah. That desire to reach those loftier goals,
Hmm.
reach the, those the greater impact type work.
Right.
Yeah, that's, I like the point that you stated that when it comes to mental illness, a lot of symptoms can go away with proper diet, proper exercise, proper sleep. But what I've found with the clients that I work with is this existential crisis of purpose, of meaning, of like, what does
Mm.
this all mean? What is it? Why am I even doing this?
Hmm.
What is this all about? And to some extent, you've demonstrated that religion does provide an answer, but it is within us to figure out how to achieve that answer in a sense,
Hmm.
how to achieve, to live the good life in the most general sense. Uh,
Hmm.
for Muslims, we have a clearly delineated, in many cases, clearly delineated about how to live the good life with regard to worship, with regard to interactions with family and colleagues and younger people, older people. But
Hmm.
then when it comes to our a'mal, our work, the legacy that we will leave behind, um, that is something for us to figure out. And then I think you've built systems in your program to help answer that question. But I say for anyone struggling with mental illness that it is the amount of people that I've talked to at this point, the the shining light of the human spirit is still something that surprises me, regardless of just how horrible the situation is.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
talk to people who've been in war, who have very bad PTSD and schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, and but there are moments where they pull out of that, even for like 5 minutes, and they say, I still have this strong desire to get my own apartment, to be a married man,
Hmm.
to be a woman that is uh, raising a family, um, to have a successful career. And then, of course, the intense symptoms take over,
Hmm.
and that's where things get out of control. And that's where my work really helps in
Hmm.
making that the immediate goal being something where we focus on the alleviation of the acute symptoms of mental illness. And then once that happens, then we do start working on, well, what is your goal? What is your purpose while we are working on this long term, this process of weaning off of medication, of reducing these strong symptoms.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, and at some point, I even as a coach, like I offer cognitive behavioral therapy, but sometimes it's not something that is bothering just the individual and what's in their mind, but it has to do with their relationships. It has to do with the
Hmm.
traumas of the past. So I appreciate you mentioning these various modalities of therapy. What was the one that you mentioned?
Internal Family Systems, IFS.
IFS, internal family
Mhm.
systems. I'm going to look into that,
Mm.
um, because
Yeah,
that's something I'm seeing.
there's a great book called Self Therapy by Jay Earley
Okay.
that explains it. Yeah.
Self therapy.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'll check this out because a lot of what I'm seeing now that I'm back in Texas and I'm getting connected with community work, and naturally, community work entails mental health,
Mm.
um, and a lot of strife between families. I'm curious to see if that's a modality that I could pull you in for. Um,
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, just briefly to mention internal family systems. So, family systems is a modality of therapy, which came first, and then Dick Schwartz basically applied um, what was presented in the family systems modality, which is about understanding dynamics of how you relate to the people around you and in your environment, in your family, then applying it to the individual psyche and thinking almost as like
Oh,
in
okay.
your head there is a whole family of
There's a family.
sub-personalities with relationships between them.
Okay.
So yeah, what
Kind of
I
like the
found was
movie Inside Out.
yeah, 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 basically. Yeah, getting to know these different voices inside of you, all the voices that are not the capital S self, which is
Hmm.
curious, compassionate, grounded, interested in connection. Anytime you're drawn off of that, it's there's some personality coming up. That's the whole theory of that. And then also, yeah, I did a lot of body work, somatic therapy too, in the
Mm.
tradition of Peter Levine, because there are all kinds of things that like um like traumatic energy in my body that I couldn't have a conversation with in a way. It just needed to be released physically. So that was
Hmm.
important for me too.
Brilliant. All right. Well, I think I've learned a lot in this conversation, how you integrate Islam into your life coaching work, how it can connect to mental health. How can people connect more with you? And yeah, what are some things that you have in the works? Like what's current? You've mentioned some of the things that are current. You've mentioned some of the things uh, on your table. So
Hmm.
how can people connect with more with you and benefit from your work?
Yeah, yeah, thanks for asking. So, yeah, we have mentioned the program, the coaching program that I run right now. So if anyone's interested in that, the go-to place would be what's right up here on the slide, fightforyourwhy.com. Also greaterwhy.com will take you there as well.
Oh, okay.
So if anyone's particularly interested in the program, they can head to that website, read a bit more details about it. You can also we have a diagnostic quiz up there too to test the strength of your why, the strength of your mission as well. So you can take that to see how your life mission holds up and if you might benefit from the program. But then, yeah, if people are interested in just connecting with me in general, I'm most active on Facebook and Instagram. Adnan
Okay.
Woodsmith. You can, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Facebook and LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm
Yes.
hoping to get on Instagram. You can actually find me on Instagram, but I never open that account, so you will not reach me that way. So
Facebook and LinkedIn. That's how
Facebook and
we
LinkedIn,
connected on
yeah,
LinkedIn.
the old people networks. That's where I am right now. But yeah, so that's where I'm most active, Facebook and LinkedIn. And you asked what's in the works. Yeah, so we have the Greater Why program for addressing mission, horizontal why, and can and are working on other ways to get those resources out there. Also, as I mentioned, working on a program for vertical why, specifically for people who specifically Muslims who might have grown up in Islam and then become disillusioned with their faith, but it still means something to them. We're building a program to help people work through that. Or maybe it's someone who is interested in Islam, but they have all kinds of doubts and questions and that kind of thing. So we're building that's under development right now. And then just in general, stay tuned for my part of my mission is just helping people as I see it with sharp minds and soft hearts become people of inspiration and initiative in their
Mm.
lives. And so just hopefully over the next few years and decades, may God give us both long lives to be helping people, just keep working on resources in that regard.
I mean, it seems that the crisis that you faced 4 years ago, one of the fruits of that crisis is the work that you're doing here.
Yeah.
And beautifully said, the sharp minds, soft hearts. I really like that as a statement of what you're trying to do.
Mm.
So, any final words before we end our conversation for today, for people that may be listening, seeking purpose, struggling with mental illness? Any final words?
Yeah, yeah, maybe just one thing of when when I was struggling with just making it through life and feeling like just ready to die. And in many instances, almost wanting to take a hand in that happening myself. The key thing that was sitting inside of me was like, what I had this strong voice inside of me of what a sad, sorry excuse for a life this is. What a sad, sorry excuse for a human being you are that you're in this position. And think about what a wasted life you have just facing this issue. I felt of myself as less than human in a way because I was dealing with such profound mental health struggles. Having been on the other side of it now, I see that the the way modern life is set up is such that it is it's understandable, but almost should be assumed that people are going to have significant mental health issues with the way society is these days. So the way I see it now is that for anyone who is struggling with a serious mental health issue, it's a sign that something is deeply right inside of your soul.
Mm,
And the fact that you're being put through this means and the fact that you can feel that you're down means that there's something in store for you in life that will bring you to an immense height. Because if you weren't meant for that height, you wouldn't be feeling the depths of that low position that you're in right now. And so
mm,
really, as I see it, yeah, the people in this world who are really struggling with their sense of mission, struggling to get through life, are actually the people who have the most potential for profound impact when
mm.
they work those things out, because they know that they have to take those things seriously. Now, they
Yeah,
have to transform, and therefore they can be agents of transformation for many around them as a result, once they do go through that process.
couldn't agree with you more. Once I went through my journey, I felt expanded in terms of my empathy, in terms of feeling
Mm,
for uh, the suffering of others, because I
yep.
myself had gone through it. And then the people who are in this space who are most successful are the ones who know that angst, that
Mm,
struggle, from your perspective when it comes to purpose, and from the perspective of mental illness as well, that these are the people that will provide the best care, because we've been through it, and we also know sometimes the unpleasant feeling of being provided services from someone that doesn't care.
mm,
So
mhm,
no matter what the level of expertise or
mm,
knowledge or information that person has, if it's not administered with care, then that can be um, detrimental, um, in in many ways as well.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Adnan, for this lovely conversation.
Thank
I
you.
knew I knew beforehand it would be a good one, and inshallah, we'll have you next time. I know you've mentioned that you might be in Texas
Mm,
in the future, so we could have you in the studio room, um,
yeah, that'd be
next,
great.
anytime you're in town. So take care, Adnan, and inshallah, we'll talk soon. Assalamu
Okay, you
alaikum.
too. Yeah, thank you very much for the pleasure of being with you today, Imran. Really appreciate it.